Hi, it's Heather Joy with Perfectly Curated Life. Thank you for joining me today. Last week I made a cake that I posted on Instagram and Facebook, and it got a lot of really positive responses, and quite a few people reached out to me to ask how to make it. So today I'm going to demo that cake and give you a few tips to kind of bump up the flavor. So when I first started cooking when I was like 8 or 7, my mom is an avid cookbook collector, and she had every manner of cookbook from every women's guild and church society and so on and so forth. So our home was always filled with different kinds of cookbooks. And one summer she got a cookbook from the Detroit Institute of Arts, and it had a recipe for blueberry muffins. And the first time I ever really homed in on something and drilled down on it was when I started making those muffins. I must have made those muffins 10 times over the course of the summer, but I wanted to get them just right. So if it takes 10,000 hours to gain expertise in any area, I earned at least 500 of those that summer with those muffins. One of our favorite family cookbooks is this one. It's the Black Family Reunion Cookbook from the National Council of Negro Women, and it has all of these amazing recipes, including Aunt Narva's apple cake, which I've made for years and is really the foundation for the cake that I'm going to show you today. Now, her cake doesn't call for a glaze. I have added a glaze, and I'm going to show you how to make that. It really makes the apple flavor pop. But that's one key difference. And then she also only uses cinnamon, and I use cinnamon and a number of other sort of autumny flavors like allspice and mace and ginger. So we add that too. But this is a very straightforward cake. It's extremely easy to make, and it is inexpensive. So all you need are cinnamon and whatever other spices in that family of your choice, flour, eggs, oil, sugar, and walnuts if you'd like. That's it. So no dairy in it besides the eggs, and butter, which is less expensive than sugar, which makes this cake overall very, very affordable to make. So we're gonna start with our leavening agent, which is a bit of baking soda, some salt, and then as I mentioned, we're gonna use cinnamon, and I have here some cardamom and allspice. So I'm just gonna dump all these in to the flour and give those a nice whisk. You really want to incorporate those well into the flour so that you don't have little patches that have pungent flavor while everything else is kind of bland. So give that a nice stir, like that. And then in a separate bowl, I'm going to mix together my flour. So I have 2 cups of flour, my sugar, my goodness. 2 cups of sugar, 1 cup of oil, just regular vegetable oil, and then 3 whole eggs. So I love this dessert also because it can be made in a bundt pan, which is what I'm going to do, or it can be made into like a loaf pan. I think the bundt pan gives it a more elegant presentation. So, and it also captures the glaze really nicely in those little pockets of the decorative bundt pan. So I'm just gonna mix together the oil and eggs and sugar. And believe it or not, we are almost done with the preparation part of the cake. I forgot to mention one huge part of the ingredients, and that's the apple. So I have 2 Granny Smith apples that I have shredded I've peeled them and shredded them. Tart apples work better for this cake, and the recipe that's in the National Council of Negro Women cookbook, the apples are sliced. I used to make it like that, but in recent times I started shredding the apples instead of slicing them because they incorporate with the batter better. That way you don't have big chunks of apples. So if you want a chunkier cake, then cut the apples into thin slices. But if you don't, you can use shredded apples. So I shredded these, and they're in a little bit of lemon water just to retard any brownness. I'm gonna just press out that lemon water. I don't want any extra moisture in the cake. But the apples will turn very brown. It won't be a huge deal if your apples do turn brown, simply because the cake is brown, so it's not that big a deal. But I'm gonna add the apples in to that oil and egg mixture. So you can see it's kind of thick there. And you don't want to over mix this once you put the flour into it. So best to try and get those all mixed in before you add the flour, because the more you beat the cake when you have flour in it, the tougher it's going to be. Okay, and then lastly, there's a little something in here. Okay. Lastly, I'm going to put in the flour and spice and leavening agent mixture. Now, I am going to use walnuts for this cake. As I mentioned, they're optional. You don't have to use them. I toasted them for 5 minutes before I came on, just to make sure that the most aromatic flavor is achieved. You need to toast them a little bit. It won't be bad if you don't toast them, but it's not going to have the same depth of flavor. So I'm going to mix this in until it's just incorporated. Again, I don't want to overbeat this, because when you have any kind of cake batter and you mix it too much, it makes it tough. And everybody wants a smooth and silky cake, not a tough cake. Okay, so this is almost done. I'm going to give it about 4 more turns here. We'll count that as 1, even though it's 1.5. 2, 3, 4, and a 5th for good measure. Okay, so you can see it's quite thick and dense. Lastly, I'm just going to add in this cup of walnuts and just stir those until they're mixed all the way through. And now our batter is complete. Now there are 2 other things I want to show you before I pop this into the bundt pan and put it into the oven. The first is, I love bundt pans. My mom and I both collect different kinds. This one is shaped like a flower, so that will actually be what the cake looks like when it comes out. Bundt pans can be a little bit tricky if you don't really oil them well. I love this spray from Pam. It has flour in it already, so you don't have to flour it after you put in the oil, because it's all in one spray. So I prefer this, and I really do give this a nice aggressive spray, because you do not want your beautiful bundt cake to come out with chunks in it because of a lack of a proper amount of oil in the cake well. So this seems like a lot, but it's going to make sure that our cake comes out in one nice piece. So we don't need to add any oil. That's all set. So now I'm just going to scoop this in evenly. All right, it's kind of heavy. And once this is all in, I'm just going to shake it a little bit to make sure that it's even. I intended to do this a couple of days ago, but to be honest, I'm still really kind of broken up over Chadwick Boseman. For those of you who liked his work and loved what he did as a man and as an artist, you know, last weekend was tough for all of us because he died so unexpectedly and so young. So I happen to really like his work. I thought he was an amazing person, a strong advocate for HBCUs, and just a modern gentleman. I mean, I don't have really high expectations of most celebrities and how they're going to behave, and I don't like to impose my view of what I think they should be doing on them. One of the things I loved about Chadwick Boseman is that he wasn't duty bound to do anything for anybody's kids, but he did. And even when he was struggling with his own illnesses, very serious illness, he still knew that he was going to be a beacon of light for those kids who saw in him something they had never seen before in a Black superhero. And he felt it was his personal duty and responsibility to help cultivate those relationships for Black children in particular, but for all children, and to carry himself with a level of dignity and poise and respect for his craft. That's really hard to replicate. So that was a huge loss. And I was in the doldrums last weekend. They had some beautiful tributes to him. Some of his former co-stars had really lovely things to say. And they had a gorgeous tribute for him on ABC, which I guess is the parent company of the company that made Black Panther. So they did a really nice thing with Robin Roberts and a lot of his influencers, including Felicia Rashad, who was his professor at Howard University. Okay, so switching gears for 1 second. One thing that helps if you ever have any unevenness in your cakes is to give it a good shake to make sure that it's even when it's going in. And then you also can kind of just gently tap it on the countertop to make sure that everything is smooth. So our cake is going to go into the oven at 350 for about 45 minutes. But before I put that in, I want to show you one other thing that will be cooking while the cake is baking, and that is the glaze. So this is just a cup of regular apple juice, and I'm going to reduce this apple juice by half. So it'll be a little bit thicker, a little bit more syrupy, and then I will add confectioner's sugar to that to make the glaze for the cake. The condensing it really helps to amplify the flavors. It concentrates everything, and so when you taste it, it's like, oh wow, that's really appley. If you don't want the extra layer of apple flavor, you can just dust it with a little bit of confectioner's sugar or eat it as is. I prefer it this way, so that's the way I'm going to make it, but I will show you how that looks as soon as we grab the cake from the oven in about 45 minutes. Take care.